Today we delve into some peculiar and poorly understood traditional hymns of the Aztec Empire. Hymns that the Spanish conquistadors and Catholic priests referred to as the Cantares Mexicanos, or Songs of the Mexicans. This collection of more than 90 ritual hymns of the Mexica people in the Valley of Mexico was recorded by native informants in the Aztec language of Nahuatl, several decades following the so-called European discovery of the Americas. Public performances of these hymns were claimed to incite a mystical experience that connected Aztec singers with a creative spirit by the name of Ipaltinemich, the title meaning literally life giver. Now, in these hymns, many of which are referred to as xochicuicatl, or flower songs, pay tribute to their creator for having sent from his home in the heavens an abundance of sweet-smelling and beautiful flowers to the earth, such that his devotees might enjoy a taste of what is to be expected in the afterlife, should a singer prove able to earn his or her passage to life-givers yonder and eternal shores of paradise. A well-known 16th century historian, following the age of the conquest, by the name of Francisco Hernandez, informs us that the cantares were traditionally performed in the plaza of the main temple of the Aztec capital city, Tenochtitlan, and that these song and dance routines traditionally began at dusk and lasted until early morning hours. Hernandez notes how the performers would dress themselves up as former kings and warrior figures in order to dramatize and presumably celebrate, to relive the glory of former battles between friends and foes of ancient Mexico. Or in other songs, the dancers would wear the skins of animals and showy bird plumes to dance and masquerade as reincarnations of their gods' divine creatures in paradise. Musical instruments accompanied the performances and usually involved the playing of flutes, the blowing of conch shells, the shaking of rattles, and the use of two types of drums. One being a drum called the huehuetl, a large and upright drum, and the other a teponaztli, a smaller, horizontal, two-toned percussive instrument that was played across a drum stand or a table. Since the Cantares Mexicanos were recorded several decades after the Spanish conquest, it has long been recognized that Christian influences had already begun to seep into the traditional verses of indigenous peoples by the time the hymns were committed to modern script, not only in word, but also in the context of religious doctrine. So, our original records of the Cantares, dating from the 16th century, are somewhat corrupt in content, somewhat Christianized, so to say, but actually sparingly so when we consider the hymnal as a whole, as we shall soon see. An almost immediate impact of European beliefs on native Aztec schools of religion can be attributed to the concerted efforts of Spanish priests to alter native ritual practices in such a way as to make them compatible with a Christian worldview and with church doctrine. Several Franciscan and Jesuit friars, including the likes of Diego Duran, Motolinia, and the Florentine friar Bernardino de Sahagún, among others, express repeatedly their shared resolve in banning and hopefully extinguishing pagan practices among their newly converted congregants. And it so happens that the Cantares Mexicanos presented some serious challenges in the process of conversion. The Dominican priest, Diego Duran, from the village of Texcoco, accused Aztec elders, for example, of covering up their pagan practices by performing traditional songs and music when, as he says, nobody is watching. He also suggests that if and when Spanish informants attended these native ceremonies, the singers would interject a shout of hallelujah or otherwise employ references to members of the Christian pantheon and church so as to disguise their true beliefs and religious intentions. In the eyes of Duran, this amounted, of course, to devil worship and heresy. And he states repeatedly that the cantares were composed in metaphorical language so as to conceal their esoteric meaning. Yet he also confesses how impressed he was with the Aztec admirable use of poetic phrasing and the mysterious tenor in these traditional songs. Perhaps the most influential of all Spanish historians during this age, Bernardino de Sahagún, echoes Duran's perspectives on the matter rather precisely, noting, and I quote, "Nobody understands what they mean because the cantares are so obscure. And even when they celebrate the songs that have been composed since the conquest, which include the subjects of God and saints, these verses are replete with errors and heresies." Unquote. Perhaps this is why the hymnal is not included in Sahagún's monumental, multi-volume ethnographic study of the Mexica people, known today as the Florentine Codex. In fact, Sahagún authored his own version of an Aztec songbook in 1583, so as to replace the lyrics of the Aztec traditionalists, which he entitled the Salmodia Christiana, or Christian hymnal. He refers to the original Aztec hymns as the devil's songs. But even so, the famous Franciscan friar admits in his introduction to the Salmodia that many communities still dared to celebrate their ancient hymns at home and in private settings, and in their original cryptic phrasings, so that only the initiated, only the traditional, could share in their metaphorical meaning. The somewhat modified lyrics of the Cantares Mexicanos, as we have them today, make repeated references to a singular creator spirit, which in and of itself clearly deviates from the polytheistic traditions of most American peoples, including the Aztecs. Yet, this reference hardly denies tradition, insofar as the most common title for what the Cantares refer to as the one and only creator, this monotheistic concept, namely Ipaltinemih. This title was formerly applied to a very prominent member of the Aztec pantheon, and that would be Tezcatlipoca, a god known as Smoking Mirror, whose name is never mentioned in the Cantares. And there is another title applied to Ipaltinemih, Seolintzin, meaning literally one movement, or perhaps first mover, which was originally a calendric name for another popular Aztec god by the name of Huitzilopochtli. Seolintzin also refers to various sun gods, including Tonatiuh, the reigning Aztec sun god during the age of the conquest. And interspersed throughout the hymnal, tangential references to these Aztec deities are generally interspersed with direct references. Deities are often interspersed with direct references in Spanish words to Dios, the Spanish word for God, Jesus, the Virgin Mary, and various bishops. So it seems clear that the early colonial singers of the Cantares Mexicanos were living up to the ecclesiastical expectations and demands of their Spanish rulers. But as we shall also see, Mexican church fathers were aware of the duplicitous role that the Cantares were playing in the lives of local natives. The performance of musical rituals had a broad and enduring geographical reach in Mexico prior to the Age of Conquest. Various geographical locations are mentioned in the Cantares, some of which are clearly mythical in origin, while others are clearly historical. For example, several famous urban centers from the Valley of Mexico are mentioned, notably Tenochtitlan, Tlatelolco, Texcoco, Azcapotzalco, Colhuacan, Chalco, and Amecameca, to name a few. These were once distant cities and villages whose sites have now been identified as subway stops in Mexico's vast subway system. But other references point to lands that lie far north and east of the Valley of Mexico, such as Tlaxcala, Cholula, Huejotzingo, and Atlisco, the latter of which fall within or near the Valley of Puebla, in addition to former hunting grounds of the Otomí, which lie in the northern state of Hidalgo. And all of these sites were recognized in some form or fashion as holy ground, if not as the literal paradisal homeland of Life-Giver himself, known widely among the Aztecs as Tamoanchan, as Tolan, and as Mictlan, the land of the dead. Translations of the Cantares from Nahuatl into Spanish were not available until the mid-20th century, so they have yet to receive all that much attention. Two famous Mexican scholars, namely Ángel Garibay and Miguel León Portilla, came to a shared conclusion that the songs provided a veritable pre-Columbian window into the Aztecs' historical past. But there is a world of controversy that surrounds the underlying thrust of these hymns, because other scholars have suggested that they represent a unique genre of religious expression that is of post-conquest origin. Owing principally to the wanton, perplexing use of metaphors in the hymns, and to lyrics that place the singers in some sort of mystical domain, or maybe I should say euphoric state of mind, that lies somewhere between the realms of mythology and history, linguists have yet to reach a consensus as to what the Cantares are actually singing about. The first complete English translation of the songs was not published until the mid-1980s by Professor John Bierhorst at Stanford University, a specialist in classical pre-Columbian Nahuatl. Dr. Bierhorst confesses in the introduction to his book that his translations are based on his personal views that the Cantares Mexicanos were not a pre-Columbian tradition, but rather a colonial-era innovation in song, which he thought was meant to rekindle the memories and nostalgia that Aztecs once held for their former ways of life. And this assumption has had a direct impact on the manner in which Bierhorst transliterates the songs into English. One common theme that runs through a large portion of the hymns is the belief that performances would transport the singers to a flower-laden paradise of their creator. This so-called green land was described recurrently as a virtual land of flowers, a Xochitlalpa, and that each of the abundant blossoms represented a vegetative reincarnation of some ancestral war spirit or famous king from the Aztecs' historical past. And just to add another complicated layer to the theatrical mix, the chanters identified themselves specifically as these same ghostly spirits when they began to sing, if not one of various divine birds in Life-Giver's paradise, whose songs were equated with the warbling of their gods' divine birds. Bierhorst refers to the descendant avian spirits as ghost warriors, because the hymns identify the mysterious birds specifically as reincarnations of former kings and military heroes, such as Montezuma or Netzahualcoyotl. And all this symbolism leaves both translators and modern readers in a bit of a quandary to figure out exactly what was the main point and objective of this Aztec tradition. While Professor Bierhorst believed that the songs were employed to conjure up enthusiasm among militarists, This assumption has been met with skepticism among the Spanish translators, who generally treat the songs as more of a celebration of life than a call to war. So let's explore today a sampling of these songs, but from a novel point of view, from the perspective of an ethnobotanist. Because I believe the flowers to which the Cantares refer so adoringly can be identified botanically, and that the identity of the plants is crucial to understand the obscure meaning of the hymns. Following this discussion and this episode on Paradise Earth, a separate episode includes a video that investigates both Aztec and Toltec iconography to test some of the novel botanical interpretations that I present herewith. So, as outsiders, let's eavesdrop on the Aztec singers and see if we can make some sense out of them. Let's begin with the opening line to song number 1 in the Cantares Mexicanos hymnal, on a hymn entitled Quica Paucayotl, meaning beginning of the songs. Where might I just get some good and fragrant flowers? Where might I ask? Why, perhaps I'll ask the precious hummingbird, the jade hummingbird. Let me ask the butterfly with the color of a saguan bird. For they are the ones who know. They know just where the good and fragrant, sweet flowers bloom. I will amble through this grove where the trogons live. Let me saunter through this flower grove of rose-colored swans. That's where the flowers are bending, with sun-glistening dew. Unquote. So that's inviting. And then the song continues to wax poetic about the wonderful land through which the hummingbirds are leading the singer. The singer ends up gazing upon a field of flowers that gleams with a golden mantle of dew and becomes quite enthusiastic. They led me to a valley, a land of plenty, a land of flowers, and there I found them laden with sun-struck dew. There I saw those beautiful precious flowers, fragrantly precious flowers, clothed in dew, filled with sun-struck water. And they said to me, "Cut whatever flowers you prefer. Make yourselves happy with them, singer. And when you arrive, deliver some of those flowers to our lordly comrades, those who will satisfy the world's owner." So, these introductory stanzas of the Cantares epitomize the general tenor and lyrical feel of the hymns, which I think we can all agree sounds quite delightful. Church fathers of the day understood, however, that the locals were up to their old ways, in their knowing that the imaginative world of the singers and their elusive figures of speech were meant to disguise their true beliefs and guarded appreciation for tradition. And the interesting thing is, modern scholars are just as bewildered by the lyrics as were the Franciscan priest guilds during the age of their composition. As earlier mentioned, the boundaries between mythology and the natural world is often blurred in the Cantares, beginning with their colorful description of God's flower land, his Xochitlali. Where might they come from, all these intoxicating flowers, these intoxicating songs, these wondrous hymns? They emanate from his abode in heaven. The flowers come from his home. Okay, so that's pretty dreamy, i.e., intoxicating flowers descending from the heavens, suggesting that we have waded now directly into the realms of myth. Yet, in the very same hymn, this Xochitlali is equated with the city of Chalco among the rushes, Chalco being a well-known and prosperous city of the Aztec Empire. Or on other occasions, the singers refer to the mythic names of their creator's home, such as Tamoanchan or as Tolan. And I quote, "Where flowers stand, and from there beyond, the drums of Tamuanchan are sounding, the shield flowers are stirring." Or, "You whirl down from Tamuanchan, the flower kingdom. Ah, these flowers increase, sung-root flowers. And from within these feather flowers you sing, O mediator," the creator. "You create the fragrance, you stand and whirl, so let's all be enraptured." Now, Tamuanchan is a mythical homeland of various members of the Aztec pantheon, and it is characterized in numerous historical records of this age as a verdant water world, a distant land of plenty, with abundant rains, mist, dew, and standing bodies of water, with flowery shorelines. The singers often refer to Life-Giver as the water-palaced Lord, and to his residents, Tamuanchan, and other sacred shorelines, such as Tolan. Tolan means literally land of reeds, based on the Nahuatl term for reedy plants, tolin. Now, tol, singularly, or tolin, plural, denotes a familiar assemblage of aquatic plants that produces emergent, linear stems and leaves that are rooted in mud along shorelines. Reeds, we say in English, such as rushes, sedges, aquatic grasses, and cattails. Such habits represented the land of the gods for the Aztecs and Toltecs in Mesoamerica, whence the name Toltec, meaning inhabitants of reedland. However, the Cantares refer to Tolan not as a locality, but as a habitat type. Tolan Nonoalco, for example, translates as the reedy place of Nonoalco. This term referring to a site that various historians have located on Mexico's Gulf coastal plain in the state of Veracruz, and thus far removed from the Valley of Mexico. Tolan Nonoalco is described repeatedly in the Cantares as the eternal shore of Life-Giver, and a place where holy flowers burgeon with jade buds and multi-hued whirling blossoms. But much closer to the Valley of Mexico, on the other side of the volcanoes Popocatépetl and Ixtaccíhuatl, lies also Tolan Chololan, today's Cholula, on the outskirts of Puebla. This site also sustained a land of Tolin, as did Tolan Chalco, on the outskirts of Mexico's famous volcanic basin. So the paradise of Life-Giver was apparently identified with any substantial body of standing water that provided a green home for Life-Giver's wondrous flowers. For these flowers were wont to arise on, as they say, on the breast of the flood, which is to say, on the edge or on the surface of still waters, denoted specifically in Nahuatl as Anahuac or Atlisco. For example, beneath him the princes are shaded, a flower mist spreads over all. This is your home, Life-Giver, here where you sing, Our Father, the only Spirit. Your song is heard on the water's edge, pervading everything. Tolan and Tamuanchan are described specifically as a flower shoreland, a Xochi Atempan, or a sacred shoreland, a Teo Atempan, or an eternal shore, the Sem Anahuac. Because Life-Giver's war flowers are described as, they are all gathering on the floodwater's bank. Ipaltinemi's flowerland is described both as a cause and an effect of the hymns, insofar as marshlands were the source of flowers, and these are, after all, their flower songs, their cuicaxochitl. just as flower songs were brought down from the heavenly paradise of God to earth to inspire the songs. When the celebrants raised their voices in unison, they envisaged themselves collectively as living reincarnation of floral war spirits, ghost warriors, in the words of Bierhorst, or just as well as divine aquatic creatures, such as conversant fish, tadpoles, mud puppies, frogs, or any number of charismatic birds that line the shores of Life Giver, as well as the showy flowers that erupted around the birds. To say the least, this is not your average Catholic experience. In Aztec tradition, these are the life forms that souls of fallen heroes were apt to assume in the afterlife, at least according to this genre of Aztec ritual. And if we are to take this particular historical record at face value, we must acknowledge that thousands of Aztec citizens shared in the experience of enjoying an early taste of paradise, whatever that actually means, even while they evaded the skeptical oversight of their Catholic wardens. Let's consider another passage, but this time we quote directly from Dr. Bierhorst's book, just to give our listeners a sense of what a seasoned expert in classical Nahuatl can glean from this written record. In a hymn entitled The Fish Song, a choir of Aztec singers identify themselves, strangely, as incarnations of mud puppy tadpoles, mud puppies being a large and drab-colored class of salamanders that once thrived in large numbers in marshlands of the Valley of Mexico. The songs proceed as such. Do we lie among reeds, O younger brothers? Then let us be put away, we that lie crammed in the waters. Alas, look at me, a mere tadpole am I. But let him arise here among us, this referring to God in the form of flowers. For I have a whistling song for him. Hail, O precious Lord, O Jesus Christ's life giver. We're all alive. By this I am born. By this I am born. I become a man. I, a mud puppy, here in the slime. They are right, and they're all set free. Again, a reference to rising flowers. I, a mud puppy, let us be pleasured in this company. Let me drink, and through them, the flowers, they arrive. They're set free. Very strange. Then the song shifts over to Life Giver, whom, referred to as a bishop in this instance, strikes up the refrain. You are stirring as feathers. Your words are dispersing. Your reed flower jades. Your reed flower pearl shells. Let us have pleasure with these, for we will have envisioned God, the world owner. We are satisfied. And then later in the same hymn, how do their songs, their flowers exist? These multicolored reed flowers, these flowers of the sun, Tonala Xochitl, that make jade water paintings dance. So here we share the passions of a so-called tadpole warrior, and we get a better feel for the mystical content of this 16th century hymnal. But do take notice that we do not seem to be dealing with war themes in a fish song. Because what sort of soldier would descend to battle as a delicate mud puppy pollywog that spends his life sucking down pond slime in the reedy marshlands of central Mexico? Consider as well the sequence of floral metaphors that create the all-important image of the Aztecs' sacred flowers. Multicolored reed flowers, then a reed flower pearl shell, each of these exhibiting the aspect of a sun, and ascribed to the role of making a metaphorical jade water painting dance with life. Life-givers' blossoms must have grown in abundance because they are frequently said to have arrived in large assemblies, arrived by the multitudes. To wit, you live before God's face, you all, a morass of flowers, living and blossoming here on earth. As you stir, quivering, flowers fall. Everlasting these flowers. Everlasting these songs that the singer uplifts, because they are borrowed from the house of the sakuan bird. In considering these first references to the songs, the specific botanical identity of life-givers' flowers might seem irrelevant because, among the many hundreds of allusions to flowers and plants in the Cantares, various flower types belong to an imaginative realm of fantasy. Flowers such as pine tree flowers or pine tree plumes or corn silk flowers and popcorn flowers. What? Or just as well, occasional references to magnolias and cacao flowers in the Cantares, or to tropical rainforest birds, such as the quetzal and trogon, are again clearly flights of the Aztec imagination, since the latter plants and animals would never be observed in the semi-arid landscapes of central Mexico, nor are the latter flowers and creatures aquatic by habit. But fortunately for us, plant references of such type are actually relatively few in number. And when you get right down to it, at least 90% of the references to the flowers of Tulan and Tamuanchan emphasize a syndrome of botanical characteristics that appear to identify a specific group of aquatic flowering plants. Now, in the last refrain that I quote, we come across a common term that refers to life-givers' lovely blossoms as reed flowers. But reeds, such as cattails, such as sedges, rushes, and grasses, don't produce visual flowers in general. In various hymns, these plants are said to stand upright and to be resplendent, feathery, and presumably circular, because they are constantly said to be whirling and twirling down from the heavens. And the stalks must have been green and glossy because reed flowers are constantly described as jades, such as, your flowers are stirring, you're blooming as jades, you are leafing multitudes, your flowers, O God. And on the banks of their creator's verdant shores, they sang, dancing singer, Tlaxcalan Chichimecs are on the causeways, raising wondrous jades, where reed flowers lie scattered at the shore. Now, the term jade, pronounced in Nahuatl as chalchihuitl, has long been a highly valued mineral in Mexico. And jadeite has long been used to carve symbolic images of cosmic plants, animals, a variety of water gods and goddesses in Mesoamerica. So, by incorporating the word jade into the plant name, as jadeite reed flowers, not only suggests verdure, but also a divine stature, presumably emphasizing the green aspect of the plant's buds and blossoms during flourishing. The jades, the flowers, are in your hand, and with the willow feather you scatter dew in this island realm, they would sing. The often repeated expression, a flower of life giver lies in my hands, implies that the flowers must have been picked to serve some material purpose in the singing rituals. But for what specific purpose and why a specific flower type are considerations that are rarely explored in published commentaries on these hymns. Jade-reed flowers live in standing waters, and their jade-colored aspect frequently changes into turquoise, shiu, or rose-colored, white, or golden flowers in a moment's notice. Hence the references to multi-hued flowers. Turquoise flowers are shining. From the banks of turquoise waters I hear them all, I, from Huexotzincan. The jade-reed flowers were also described as colored flower banners, as flags, after assuming an upright, standing position, perhaps with some sort of columnar aspect. Consider, for example, turquoise columns stand, created, Santa Maria. The heavenly columns stand created. God rules over this realm forever. He cradles the earth and sky. His jades, his flowers, are in your hands. And since the flowers are turquoise pigmented in numerous songs, their columnar appearance must surely refer to the plant's reedy stalks on God's eternal shores. Now, obviously, one would need additional morphological details about a plant to make a definitive species determination. But there are, in fact, a few direct references to the botanical identity of life-givers' blossoms in several independent passages. When the singers identify reed-flower jades, specifically as water lilies, most of the cryptic metaphors and allusions pertaining to the divine nature of these flowers begin to make complete sense. For example, as regards that aforementioned mud puppy soldier, I, a singer, beat my flower drum, a mud puppy soldier. So let's be pleasured with flower banners. You, mud puppies, who makes their home among the many-colored water lilies. That would be the Tlapala Atlquesona, many-colored water lilies. Now, water lilies are plants that you might expect to encounter on the eternal shores of Life-Giver's flowerland. And it is the only aquatic flowering plant that I am familiar with in this area of the world, whose petals can vary from lilac to blue, pink, sometimes they are white, or any number of shades in between. And they produce and display a prominent ovarian disc that is bright yellow in color. Moreover, this particular group of plants produces a very large and shiny ellipsoid green, jade-colored bud that terminates the end of very thick, reedy stalks. These buds open into round flowers with a circular array of around 20 petals. Now, the Nahuatl term for water lily in the Cantares is Atlaquetzonan. The word is cited in various 16th century Nahuatl documents, dictionaries, and lexicons, and translates literally as lady or goddess of the waves, thereby complementing the plant's close associations with fish, with reeds, mud puppy soldiers, and other many-hued flowers at the water's edge. The same general theme is encountered in a hymn entitled Birdsong, Toto Cuicatl, but with specific reference to avian ghost warriors, that is, descendants, reincarnations of heroes that appear as birds, some from Huexotzincan, Etolan, that share their so-called feather flowers and plume songs. And I quote, "Let your cares be gone, and let's cut those golden, radiant water lilies, those Atlaquetzonan, these beautiful reed flowers, Akashochitl, and go Nephew, go, princes, composers of these wondrous songs, shared by all. So there you have it, right up front. The proverbial reed flowers are water lilies, which seems perfectly reasonable insofar as large and lustrous water lily blossoms are borne solitarily on fleshy, upright reed stalks that arise in multitudes from underwater, and often to a backdrop of reedy sedges, rushes, and cattails on shorelines. The large and shiny green buds that develop at the tips of the narrow stalks are actually jade-like in appearance. After several days of bud development, they break open to reveal a circular array of petals whose colors can vary within or between natural populations. Since the petals have a feathery aspect when quivering in a breeze, the jade reeds and their flowers are often referred to as plume-flowers or feathery flowers, xochiquetzali. So the jades are said to break open, to shatter, in a natural process that some songs describe as the spreading of feathers on plume flowers. And we might remind ourselves at this juncture that we, on Paradise Earth, have demonstrated over and over again in various previous episodes that water lilies are conventionally portrayed in the arts of Maya and Toltec traditionalists as having large bundles of decorative feathers emanating from their open corollas. These reed flowers are collected by the celebrants as though they were captive revenants, captive, so-called war flowers. Let me pick you easily. Hail, nephew. Otowetskit. They pass away as reviving reed flowers, as colored standards, now passing away as captives. This is how I carry off these painted green ones. In other passages, the stirring reed flowers wax golden as they blossom forth in flooded flowerland, and descend to earth by whirling down as jewels, as jades, often in the symbolic guise of colorful waterfowl with colorful feathers. These flowers, as rose-colored swans, he paints them gold as rosy swans and turquoise birds. He gives pleasure as he entertains this company of lords. With these reeds, these flowers, there is dancing. So the warriors are dancing like swaying aquatic flowers, like ascendant jade flowers, water lilies, while the painter of birds in all creation, life-giver himself, fashions his plumed flowers in the form of rosy and turquoise waterfowl, or on other occasions, as resplendent rainforest birds, such as, in some cases, parrots, quetzals, trogons, and such. In numerous hymns, a jade reed flower is equivalent to a feathery reed flower, a quetzal acaxochitl. For sings one hymn, there, twirling with parrot colors, these, your beautiful songs, your beautiful flowers. Among them you walk, you wander, twittering among the feathery reed flowers. Or another, reedy feather flowers, they emit such fragrance. All the birds dwell there, and they're inhaling as they fly along in your home. You come from the place of painted waters. You come carrying your picture painting songs. They're twirling and colorful as they stir. They're sprouting as feathers, God's flowers. And again, you are stirring your feathers. You are spreading your words. Let us all find pleasure in these reed flower jades and reed flower pearl shells, for we have seen the world owner, God. So the petals and feathers of the singing bird flowers come a-whirling, this illusion implying, one would guess, to a radiate array of numerous water lily petals. Symbolic associations between water lily petals and bird plumes is an iconographic practice that we encounter in a majority of the urban centers of pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, especially among the lowland Maya. Moreover, one water lily species of central Mexico, Nymphaea elegans, is multi-hued and complements the color patterns of the symbolic flower birds of the Cantares, depending on the color of the plumage, aka the color of the petals. Whereas some blossoms are described as having white feather flowers that drift down upon the water's surface, most are described as either turquoise, pinkish, but if so being, they also exhibit a golden sheen. To quote one refrain, "Various birds, these trogons and rosy swans, are like feathers to you. By these you paint your drums on earth. These flowers are your riches. They come from his home in the heavens. Only from his home come all these flowers." Or more typically, "I shall wander through this flower grove of rosy swans. For this is where they bend with sun-struck dew. This is where they blossom in beauty." Most of the flower birds are waterfowl of some type, which is naturally consistent with the aquatic home life of Life Giver, a land of floodwaters and verdant shores. One such bird is called the Aztec, stork or heron, or the Aztec, the heron swan, which ostensibly refers materially either to a snow egret or white juvenile phases of Mexico's blue heron, the Timatlal astatototo. And these birds are equated with white plume-flowers, much as a divine white eagle, a Cuautli Istak flower. Or in another hymn we hear, "A white flower cackler am I, now arrived. This is my feather fan, I, Netzahualcoyotl. I've come from Chamuanchan, from where the flowers descend." And then there's the Xiu tototl, a turquoise pigmented waterfowl, called also the turquoise swan, the Xiu quecholi, which is equated, of course, with turquoise swan flower, Xiu quechol xochitl, xochitl meaning in Nahuatl flower. "Your flowers are greening as jades, O life giver. Flowers are sprouting and blossoming as turquoise waterfowl. But they are only near you and in your presence for a brief moment." Or again, "As turquoise birds in one aggregation, the lords are entertained. And with these reeds, with these flowers, we dance." And "Plume water, turquoise gems are singing in these waters. They're sprouting." Another flower song likens the flowers to a roseate spoonbill, a tlauch quecholi, tlauch meaning rosy. "Now these are greening, these, God's flowers, these, his rose-colored swan water juveniles, these that stand as offspring, these that stand all lush with leaves. Ah, yeah, we little children will cut them." But on most occasions, the cosmic birds are identified with flowers or floral ghost warriors. "And all the roseate swans, the troupials, are spreading their wings in flowerland. They are the princes. They are my nephews." So the appearance of floral ghost warriors as bird incarnations follows a very consistent and logical pattern in Aztec symbolism. Yet ghost warriors embody something more specific than a generic concept of flower. For it seems they embody the white, blue, and rose-colored varieties of the water lily Nymphaea elegans. Because flowers are the focal subject of the Cantares, their divine significance can hardly be overstated. Just as green jadeite was a highly valued medium in the visual arts, so too were the widely sought green tail feathers of the ever-popular quetzali bird from tropical Mexico, which is not in any way an aquatic bird, nor a creature that was ever native to the Valley of Mexico. This creature was an infrequent denizen of deep evergreen rainforests in southern Mexico, and was highly revered for its long green tails and back feathers, as well as bright blue, red, and white plumage that covered his body. These same colors were equally applicable to God's sacred flowers. Sunstruck flower drums stand beyond. They're beaming. Like a fan of quetzal plumes, they radiate greenness. And upon this flowery flood, a feathery intoxicant arrives within the home of the jade flower. The trogons, whirling flowers, distribute themselves. He sings within. He warbles therein. The quetzal. In addition to these avian manifestations, we encounter various references to a quetzal butterfly flower, the Xochin quetzal papalotl, papalotl being the butterfly in Nahuatl. Or perhaps we should say a feathery butterfly blossom. This creature is similarly God-sent, and inherently he is attracted to the plume-flowers. So butterflies also represent ghost warrior revenants. The flower butterfly, the Xochipapalot, is pleasing himself on these flowers. He inhales our flowers, our hand flowers, our fans, our reed fragrance. With these, he is whirled. Or quetzal butterfly flowers come flying as feathers. I make them to dance. The Cantares emphasizes symbolic reciprocity of most creatures on God's green shores. So transformations between creatures in the middle of a refrain is to be expected. I, the singer, I'll pass away and change into a butterfly flower. And I'll pass away to soar in this aggregation. Ah, I will revel in songs, in flowers. Just as a flower can also become a song. I, a flower butterfly, let me sing beside him. Ah, this flower of mine, this creation will revel. I open them up. I sing these songs. Like turquoise flowers and rosy swan flowers, war flowers and song flowers on God's flower shores are said to open to the dawn and to beam, or to glisten, both in the sun and like the sun. Sacred flowers of the dawn, which they call tlahuizal xochitl, flowers of the dawn, are blooming in the rainy place of flower wars, which belong to him, the ever-present, the ever-near. The heart-pleasing flowers are laden with sun-struck dew. Or, let's go drink the delicious flower water in flowerland, our home, the earth with its celestial flowers. These heart-pleasers, this dew of life, are emanating fragrance in our home. Sunflowers are blooming in the land of plenty. Whatever the color of the flowers or feathers, Aztec hymns are also insistent that the multi-hued blossoms open to the sun bear the aspect of a sun and apparently reflect the sun's rays when the so-called dew of life is covering the flowers in early mornings. These distinctive floral attributes are actually quite accurate descriptions of a water lily, since this group of flowers typically glistens brightly in the sun when copious nectar secretions fill up the flower's golden disc-shaped pistil with a liquid exudate. That is the picture Life Giver paints when a song asks the rhetorical question, how do these songs, these flowers exist? These many-colored reed flowers, these flowers of the sun, Tonala Xochitl. that make the jade water paintings dance? Or, as flowers, you come filled with sunshine in Blazeland and fragrantly. Another hymn states, "It's raining jades, and they are golden ones, these bursting ones. It seems that they're your flowers, life-giver." Or again, "Let's cut these golden, these aureate water lilies, these wonderful flowers." So obviously, the turquoise, rosy, and white coloration of the flowers does not preclude a golden radiance as well. While the water lily's plant name, reed flower, acaxochitl, is actually a fitting description, repetitive references to reed flowers and jade flowers as also war flowers, yauchochitl, is obviously metaphorical and somewhat obscure in meaning. For who thinks of a war with an attack of flowers? In the specific context, metaphorical context of a war flower, the blossoms are wielded as though they were weapons, because they are raised, these flowers, as shield flowers, as banner flowers, and as blaze flowers, along with threatening arrows and lances. Says one hymn, "These feathery water flowers, these blaze flowers, go budding, go swelling. Arrows and shields are now our duty here in Chololan, here in Huexotzinco." Or, "Shield flowers, standing up and blooming, for desires and longing, on the surface of the waters." Now this is an interesting assertion, that shield flowers are more for desires and yearnings than for the destruction of armed adversaries. Blaze flowers and shield flowers are blossoming in abundance. These flower shoots are for the taking. They break up and disperse themselves plentifully, these golden ones, as captives. And they pass away, but revive themselves as reed flowers, as colored standards, passing away again as captives. The notion of taking these flower spirits as captives, and as both shield and banner flowers, apparently relates to the activity of harvesting the multicolored reed flowers for ritual use. So water lilies themselves have arisen as arrows, as darts and banners and shields. These allusions apparently relating to the arrow and dart-like characteristics of their budding reed stalks, while the round shields and banners are symbolic of colorful, open, radiate blossoms. Now, the classic and most frequently encountered symbolic image that signifies warfare in Aztec tradition is known as the Atl Tlachinoli motif, meaning the blaze water or the flood blaze emblem. Atl meaning water, Tlachinoli meaning blaze. This motif is conventionally presented in the hands of war spirits of the Aztec pantheon, or otherwise emanates from a soldier's or a divine creature's mouth in the form of two divergent fluxions of water, one of which produces a snail-like or bud-like design on its surface, and another that terminates in the profile of a polypetalous flower that emits flames. Atl Tlachinoli symbol. Although never identified as such, this flower can now be justifiably identified as a water lily. And in support of this determination, we need only consider that the war flowers are denizens of Tolan's shorelines, where life-givers' water flowers are also said to flame as blaze flowers, as Tlachinol Xochitl. So we have Xochiatl, or we have Axochitl, water flower, we have Tlachinol Xochitl, and we have verses as such. Flowers of the water, Xochiatl, all ablaze, come stirring. So there you have it, O princes. Life-giver places his arrows, his shields in your hands. Blaze flowers, war flowers, Yaxochitl, Who doesn't want them? Who doesn't yearn for them, O princes? Or in another hymn, a featherfish spirit swims about the jade-reed flowers and proclaims, "Your city in Jade Land is arising on an arrow of flaming flowers, O soul spirit." Because, in another hymn, we Mexicans are submerged in water plants. A water blaze flower, Tlachinoli Xochiatl. And it turns out that flaming arrow flowers and shield flowers are the chosen weapons of two symbolic apex animal predators of the Americas that are also closely associated with the Atl Tlachinoli water blaze symbol. These being the Aztec eagle and jaguar, a dual aspect of the Creator when he calls all ghost warriors to his proverbial fields of perpetual flower wars. To quote, "In Blaze Land, bearing fragrance, you stand filled with sun rays, as flowers. God is he that shines among the jaguar blades. He, as an eagle, screams." Yet the eagle and jaguar never seize or attack an armed adversary, but generally serve their Creator by pleasuring the singers with their weaponized flowers in sunstruck morning dew. Princes and kings are sprouting as eagles, greening as jaguars in Mexico. Lord Ahuitzotl is singing arrows, singing shields. So the eagle and jaguar represent, so to say, the yin and yang of warfare, the water and fire of creation, and also Aztec war symbolism. Animal symbols of these flowers. They'll never die, these war flowers. They amass, on the flood's border. These jaguar flowers, these shield flowers are blooming. In other refrains, O life giver, there a jaguar and eagle sprouts. There lords are blossoming. They are arising in blades. Let's be pleasured, our friends. Let princes be pleasured on this field. Let there be a coming forth to life. Hardly warfare. On the flood's edge, on the eternal shorelines of Tolan, Nonoalco, and Tolan Chololan, these flowers wage war. The flames are rising from flood waters. Take heart where flood and blaze are spreading, where empire, kingship, and divine flowers are won. With sword and shield on the battlefield of earth, you earn sacred flowers that you desire. Taking what you want, my friend, those that the people deserve, those that He entrusts to you, He, the ever-present, the ever-near. And in keeping with the logic of Aztec symbolism, these war flowers cannot be distinguished from the aquatic feather flowers, to which we've referred, the Quetzal a Xochitl. These feathery flowers of the waters, these blaze flowers whose buds are swelling, arrows and shields called to duty in Chololan. I offer up myself, then beyond, then stirring at the shore, stirring in the house of shields, these Chichimecs arrive. So in the latter refrains, former adversaries of the Aztecs, known as the Cholutecs from Chololan and the Chichimecs from north of Mexico City, formerly enemies of the Aztecs, are just as likely to send as floral spirits as are former Aztec heroes. A flowery flood, a blaze comes a-stirring, and there you are, you princes. Life-giver places his arrows, his shields in your hands. Blaze flowers, war flowers. Who does not pine for them? Who does not crave them, O princes? So jaguar and eagle princes, aka ghost warriors, are what all seekers seek a host of brilliant flowers, each bearing an inebriating dew of life. One of the most relevant and also overlooked aspects of Aztec war flowers relates to their habit of accumulating and glistening with morning dew. Consider, for example, the following strains. Let me amble through this grove where the trogons are. Let me wander through this flower grove of rosy swans. That's where the flowers are bending with sun-struck dew. Or this specific stanza, which we have already cited, delves deeper into the desirable nature of life-givers' blossoms. And there I found them, laden with sun-struck dew. There I saw those colorful, precious flowers, fragrantly precious flowers, clothed in dew, laden with sun-struck water. And they said to me, cut whatever flowers you prefer, make yourselves happy with them, singer. And when you arrive, deliver some to our lordly comrades, those who entertain the world owner. Or, similarly, sacred flowers of the dawn are blooming in the rainy place of flowers that belong to him, the ever-present and the ever-near. Heart-pleasing flowers are laden with sun-struck dew. Since we now know that reed flowers are water lily stalks, and that in nature they exhibit the unique habit of overbrimming and sometimes even spilling watery nectar on the first day of flowering, we are given to reconsider translations that refer to the glistening liquids in water lilies as dew, when in fact it seems the singers are actually referring to the copious amounts of floral watery nectar that distinguish this group of plants, of aquatic plants. The trait is also implied in a metaphorical context as weeping flowers, whose tears belong both to the flowers and to their creator. Says one hymn, flower tears come trickling down to the flower drum, to the singing place. Now, these would be the same tears of both joy and regrets of the Aztec revenants that sing on the water's edge. For such is life. Chalk and feathers come spinning, weeping flowers, shield flowers, stand up, blooming, desirable and attractive, on the water surface. Some singers would recognize the floral tears as their own, since they themselves are reincarnations of the flower. And in response to their realization that life is a short and transitory affair, and that we all can only enjoy ourselves for a borrowed span of time, as related in the following stanzas. There are no second chances to live on earth, O Chichimec princes. So shall we not take our pleasures? These flowers cannot be taken to the land of the dead, but can only be borrowed. And it is true, we shall all eventually perish. And where do we go from here to die? Do we still continue to live? Is there a place of pleasure, a pleasure land, O life-giver? Or are our delicious flowers and songs restricted to the earth? Let them be our riches, let them be our adornments. So with these, now, take your pleasure. Or in a similar vein, we hear, let no heart be troubled while here on earth, for though we are sad, though we weep, emulate them, the flowers. My friend, you, the perturbed, now joyless here on earth. Adorn yourself with sad flowers, weeping flowers, and praise him. Your flower sighs at him, the ever-present, to him, the ever-near. In one hymn, the Creator himself, who manifests the nature of life on his eternal shores, claims the tears of the flowers as his own. Flowers descend to earth. Life-giver casts them downward to earth, these sacred flowers, these most golden flowers. We shall be adorned with these, O princes, you lords. Life-giver casts them down, these sobs of God. And they come heaping up, these sacred flowers, these yellow flowers. Or these can be tears and weepings of a divine bird, like those of the roseate spoonbill and his pink swan flower friends. Rose-colored swan flowers are opening. These jewels, they are dispersed. These, your tears, taking root, you warble among them. Recurrent references to the liquid properties of the Aztec sacred flowers are not only helpful in determining the botanical source of Aztec inspiration, they also point to a poorly explored material role that the blossoms seem to have played in Aztec song and dance. It's pretty clear that the weeping and water-drenched flowers were cut and harvested, and then shared among the reverends, having been, quote-unquote, passed from hand to hand, as one hymn says. But not solely for adornment, for it seems the sun-struck dew, frequently referred to as the dew of life, was imbibed, was drunk, and had some sort of an inebriating effect on the celebrants. In fact, the ecstatic tenor of Aztec chants suggests they arose from a palpable uplift in the singer's mood. One hymn stating, "Let's go drink flower water wine in our home, where we so desire it. Let's go quaff flower water in the land, where everyone knows glee, our place to debut, the land of flowers, the land of plenty." Now, this particular verse is somewhat unclear as to whether the singers are drinking from dew-laden flowers or from pools of clear water that are home to the blossoms. This issue is clarified, however, in many other hymns, which relate that singers were intoxicating themselves with the flower sunstruck dew. For this was the potion, the drink, that, quote-unquote, pleasured a singer's heart. I toss these narcotic feather flowers, these chocolate flowers, these that give off fragrance in Huejotzinco amid the flood waters. Let's have flower inebriation and festivity, O princes. Let there be feather dancing in the home of the only spirit. The Nahuatl term that refers to inebriating effects, or by association to a plant that has shamanistic or divinatory properties, is pollomatl in Nahuatl. And reed flowers, or water lilies in the Cantares Mexicanos, are constantly described as pollomaxochitl, or xochipollon, which is to say, literally, flowers that make you high. On various occasions, the so-called dew of life is referred to specifically as octli, a term that normally applies to the popular alcoholic beverage known as pulque in central Mexico, the well-known Mesoamerican fermented drink derived from maguey plant juices, the same source of distilled tequila and mezcal today. However, maguey plants are desert plants, and the flowers to which the Cantares refer are harvested from the waters of God's flower shores. So apparently, the dew of life inspired song, dance, music, and, well, apparently, a sensational feeling of drunkenness. From flower land proceed all the whirling flowers that make hearts spin. Whirled ones, get you high flowers, i.e. xochipollon. And since the narcotic flowers were also identified as either plume-flowers or cosmic waterfowl, even life-givers' birds are described as either intoxicated or as intoxicating, such as, "In the waters he sings and warbles, and his fellow swans All noble lords, these Aztecs, hey, are chattering and quaffing feather flower water wine. Quetzal a Xochi Octli. Even first mover, Seolintzin, as the dawn flower, who brings the dispersing lords and gives a gift of flower brilliance to the eagle jaguar princes, intoxicates him with his flower dew of life. So a singer attributes his own warbles to the inebriating flowers, or to intoxicating blue waterfowl. Lifting my voice, I bring down intoxicating flowers, these turquoise swans. Or sometimes they state the case straight up. Yes, I know where flowers blossom. I uplift the swans, Tamuanchan's living narcotics. Or, I'm a tipsy Aztec now, so I'm greening as a flower eagle. I'm spilling the flowers inebriant. And this enjoyable drink was apparently shared among all the singers and ghost warriors. I'm a flower lord, a woman, and we share company with a dancing reed hunter. All our flower spirits are wondrously drunk. We are drunk together, my nephews, ah. In English, the word drunkenness normally refers to the use of alcohol. But the effects of drinking a flower potion appears to be more intense, it would seem, than pulque. Moreover, lyrics of the Cantares never extol the virtues of drinking pulque. Oh no, but upon drinking the dew of life, a person loses all feeling of anxiety or pain and believes that they have appeared before the face of God, as war flowers recurrently and profoundly please the heart of singers. At Bird Shore, drunk with sacred floodwater wine, is the eagle fowl, the Aztec eagle fowl. They're all flourishing on the floodwaters. They're drunk on waterflower, tipple, these Mexicans. Or, if I were to translate these matters into modern terms, one refrain would go as such. Be gladdened by this flower land, because last night I was so drunk, totally zonked out. And today, again I am plowed. So hey, wouldn't your heart prefer this? Take my hand and let's take off to our home. He's drunk it. Oh, rowdy parrot, we're gone. He's just so drunk. Now that flower dew drinker is feeling no pain. And if we explore the entire corpus of Aztec hymns, we find ample evidence to suggest that many Aztec singers were entirely familiar with the well-known practice of using psychotropic plants and fungi to incite spiritual revelations, which some singers actually integrated into their singing rituals. Two verses stand out in particular in the Cantares Mexicanos, one of which makes direct reference to the ingestion of a Mexican magic mushroom tea, a nanaka, octli. Nanaka referring to flesh, or the flesh of mushrooms, octli to an inebriating potion. To quote, I'm drunk. I drunk a mushroom potion. My heart is weeping, and I grieve on earth, because I am poor. And another stanza alludes to the use of a powerfully intoxicating extract of a nightshade plant from Mexico known in Nahuatl as either mixitl, tlapatl, or toloatzin. That would be, in English, jimson weed, or in Spanish, toloache. The sole reference to this plant in the Cantares actually criticizes, however, the arrogance and foolishness of tlapatl users. So clearly, the preferred, tried and true source of libation ingredients among this crowd was the heart-pleasing jade-reed flowers from God's eternal shores, the water lily. So though we have a completely novel perspective on the Cantares, as deduced from an ethnobotanical point of view, and fortunately, for corroborative evidence to test my water lily hypothesis, we can turn to a rich and multi-layered archaeological record from central Mexico. As we have explored many times in other episodes on Paradise Earth, the water lily was perhaps the most popular of all vegetative motifs among Toltec and Maya communities, at least in terms of their iconographic records. And now we find that the same plant was of equal importance to pre-Columbian Aztec singing rituals. So, in light of the foregoing, it would seem that civilized societies of central Mexico held fragrant flowers and shots of flower dew in higher esteem than the Spanish held gold, held silver slaves in their palaces. And reticent Aztec elders seem to have held fast to past beliefs and rituals well into the 17th century. The celebration of the Cantares seemed to compare in some ways to bacchanalias of the Greeks, or perhaps one could say to modern-day raves, and that significant portions of the Aztec Empire convened in large gatherings to share in libation ceremonies and holy sacraments that resulted in altered states of mind and a sensation of gaining admittance to the realm of the gods. Even though Spanish priests also offered the promise of eternal life in paradise, right? That possibility was contingent on a native's renunciation of traditional beliefs and practices. But judging from the take-home message of the Cantares Mexicanos, it seems the Mexica actually had a more tangible handle on paradise than their European overseers could have imagined or ever offered. Obviously, many individuals chose hallowed archaic rituals over prayers and practices that were learned in Catholic catechisms of the 16th century. And perhaps no less so today, because all of us on Paradise Earth must make our choices as to how we explore that which we perceive to be divine within the world and within our own selves. For the Aztecs, that shared goal took no more than a few sips of sunstruck dew, followed by a little song and dance, to find their way back to the eternal shores of their life-giver, Ipaltinemich.